Hello, this is another follow-up on the IndieCON experience, again in Rimini, and I had just brought notes with me, as usual. Now, when you have very much a proto game with you, and you sit down with people, and you really have to say, we're not going to have fun, or we're going to have fun. And I guess I mean not have fun in the sense that I have no experience to deliver to you with a guaranteed, oh, this game rocks. You wait till you see how this works. I can't do that. But on the other hand, you're in on a creative process and you're being included in a part of it that very, very few people really get to do. And if you are open to that, then you can provide immense insight, not by analyzing, but just by doing and being observed. And you can feel very included in an authentic way, completely not fake, because without you, this can't proceed. All right, well, what did I have with me as these notes? And it was this precise document. This is the internet background image that I hooked from somewhere to sort of keep with me at all times when I work on this. And so little Dreams of Fire notes, as you can see, quite small amount of material. Kind of meaty. The thing I told them was what I've been telling everybody about it, or to start with, and we just moved straight into character creation. The idea was to just keep going with what I had until I found a place where I didn't know what to do, and then I spitballed something to get to something where I kind of thought I knew what to do. And when we couldn't go any further, just didn't have the capacity for that activity, then we just stopped and talked about it. Continued with conversation. Who was it? Moreno, a long-time friend and associate, as well as two people, Mickey and Hatya, both of whom brought a great deal of enthusiasm to this. All of whom did, actually. And so what did we end up with? Well, the three characters. Now, this would be, I think I made up one too. Or I had one with me. I think I just had one with me off the sheet. Just like Circle of Hands, everybody would make up two. But I just had each of them make up one. So let's take a look at these. One is, well, you see the process is this real step-by-step kind of thing, which I think I have down really well. So should I go take you through the process, or should I summarize? Let's summarize. So this was Hatya's character, and came from a soldier background and stayed with the soldier career. And the way I want to do this is to provide maps. So if you say I'm from the soldier background, you get this map of the city, which is more or less what somebody from that family background would perceive as the city. Some parts are much more detailed than others. The proportions would be kind of subtly off. The scale of the whole map would be relevant. Their perspective was to think of the city as part of a larger region, obviously. Things like that. So they would get their map. Now, somebody from a different family background would be getting a very different map. Some of them might even just be a portion of the city. So I want to kind of do that. I like the idea of having two or three maps that are sort of your character's lens or view through their specific lens of where all this was taking place. So that when you say, well, we could go to the such and such, it would be the kind of place that your character would know about, think about, and prioritize mentally. Okay, cool. I didn't have any such thing with me, but that's the idea. What else about this character? Interestingly enough, through the various options, ended up having 3 of the 4 social ranks available. Oh, I take it back. No, this one was quite constrained. This one had only one social option available, which was to be a debt holder, somebody who could somebody who actually held the debts of others, and so therefore was more propertied, if that's the right word, or rather represented more wealth and more social heft on that basis than merely being a career soldier would do for you. This doesn't necessarily mean somebody who commands large flocks of labor or something like that. The culture is a little interesting this way. But anyway, the person is doctrinal and ruthless, has invested authority, meaning that granted authority from others. That's an interesting, that's something they rolled, which goes kind of together with the debt holder in an interesting way. It's not like they were wealthy and took on other people's debt. It meant that they've basically been assigned to do so. So that's kind of cool. Got that. A few other details which are neat. Then we have, I believe this is Moreno's character, yes, from a venture merchant family background, which that probably would have the biggest region, with trade routes and stuff, and certain sectors of the city where lots of commerce goes on or something like that would be not day-to-day commerce like food, but something like that, something more related to specialty goods, things like that. Well then, what else? We have here the interesting point that their social setup gave them the opportunity to be elite, which Moreno chose to do. This is so that's the social rank, and then what else do we find? We find that he doesn't have any kind of authoritative status. His status is just friendly ties with fellow artists. And so let's see, we had, you're right, so he's wealthy and he's educated. So this is kind of funny. I mean, one of the nice things about this system that I think is amusing is very much like the top of the social scale in Circle of Hands. There's sort of an interesting thing. In Circle of Hands, you can't have more than one profession. The only profession you can have if you're gentry is the high martial background or professional activities. You have anything else and you can't be gentry. You're all of a sudden busted down to the next rank or whatever else the other thing is. So doesn't mean they can't have high wits and stuff like that, but it means that to be gentry, it's the only thing you know how to do. Whereas here it's kind of funny because it's more nuanced, but if you're wealthy and you're educated, it's kind of funny. You can't be anything else. You're basically useless. And his other roles tied into this really nicely, in that he's just kind of this person who does art and has friendly ties, a generous personality, and you kind of look at him and go, and what do you do exactly? Well, anyway, so that's kind of fun. Mickey's character is the most nuanced, coming from an engineer architect background, which is actually really important. This is an ancient city of stone and many layers of materials, and so simple expertise with stonework and waterways and anything about life in the city is just an ongoing area of expertise for people. And the map for that would be awesome, because it would show like how parts of the city work that other people just take for granted. Modern cities are very useful in this regard in terms of natural waterways. It's often a bit of a shock when you look at a modern city, the city you live in, and realize where the rivers are. And you're like, wait a minute, I walk over that all the time. I mean, wait, what? So kind of interesting. So we have other things. Another, like Moreno, got wealthy and educated, and in this case with invested authority over others, assigned authority that they don't actually personally hold except by someone else saying so, and had the choice to be either elite or a slave, and chose slave. So very interesting in that, remember, you can be wealthy in this culture and be a slave. There are cultures historically where that was the case, and this is one of them. And so let's see, there was a couple of other interesting points. Oh yes, a scholar now. So originally in that engineering thing, but now a scholar. So kind of this librarian educator, here you teach. And so she said, yeah, well, I was enslaved through debt, and now I am in charge. I used to be, I was a scholar, but they put me to work and I am a teacher. So this is kind of interesting too. Um, this game produces establishmentarian characters. You are engaged in the culture at whatever social rank, you're invested in it, you're active in it, you are successful in it in your way, and then the game comes along and just hammers you, just ruins it, because you're a seer, you get these visions, and you know the city is going to burn, and so that's intense. Well, anyway, we went through that and we sort of got going on the playing stuff, and that's when I realized, okay, there's stuff I just don't have. One in particular, I think I'm going to rip this off a bit from, you can actually find it in Trollbabe in the form that I'm thinking of, and another aspect of it is central to Shahida. But what I have in mind is that there's little, like, just cards, which are family charts. Relationship maps in the sorcerer sense. And so not like plot scenario charts of who's who doing what, wanting what, but just kin, romantic, other ties of that kind, chart it out. And just like you can make for yourself in 3 minutes. And so just grab them and just throw them to people like potato chips. And it's not intended to be profound. It just means that you have something to look at and say, okay, I'm going to talk to my brother. There you go. Because you have one. And I kind of like that you can just sort of see, I mean, when people are kind of flapping their hands going, so who would I talk to about that? And the idea is, well, everybody has these family ties that sort of extend through everything. So here's your little map, and you can just say, okay, well, I'm going to this person who's closely related to me, or this person who's secondarily related to me, or something like that. And it's not really all that important as detail until it's used, and in which point it springs to life. So it's more almost of a resource than a description at first use. Cool. So I got the idea of doing that, and then that way you have people to walk through. I don't want to front load too much, you see. I don't want to have everybody with an enormous genealogy before play. It takes too much time, exhausting, kind of ruins the whole march of the climax of character creation, which is to choose the thing that you cherish, that you love or you value or that you hope for. That's a really big deal. Each of them chose those two, and play really focuses on them. So that's the climax of character creation, and I don't want to like gum it up with just filling out forms like names on this or that character with no consequence in character creation. So fortunately, we didn't do that, but it was clear that they needed something. So play had shown me how useful maps of that kind would be. And it had shown me how useful these little family charts or whatever similar things would be. And it also, I think, really showed that the characters were active. The players had really no problem jumping into things and saying, the image that I gave of their shared dream was so compelling to them that they felt frightened and energized. One other thing that I was toying with but didn't introduce when I talked to them and when we sat down and realized that I really wanted to do after all was the lesser magic. There's the great magic, which nobody knows about, which is the vision that just blows their minds and makes them crazy if you want to look at it that way. And, is very hyper demonic, and you kind of can elevate your mind into these massively metaphysical realms and confront beings and the engines, mighty engines at the source of the universe and shit like that. But that's pretty big gun. I mean, you don't do that as you're kind of working your way through the situation, and it also is intended to carry very significant price on your character, and so therefore, again, it's not fair to sort of expect, okay, now ruin everything, destroy your character out of the gate. So I kind of came up, or had come up, with some thoughts about lesser magic, which was very much more, well, urban magic, city, charm magic, minor token ritualistic magic that involved the statuary and the. I liked the idea that there's bronze everywhere, bronze statues and bronze faces set into things and all kinds of stuff like that, and that people who live there sort of made casual use of these things and didn't really think otherwise. Also, sort of amusing, of course, that foreigners won't really have any knowledge or awareness, acknowledgement, wouldn't really get it that it was even happening. But that in its more extreme forms, that yeah, you could, have the bronze serpent, uncoil from the globe that it's wrapped around and go off and do something, or at least it would seem to you as if it had. So that would give the characters a little bit more weight in their day-to-day activities, in trying to cope with the new situation. Well, anyway, so I'm still working out things like certain mechanics, certain capabilities, but most importantly, the momentary aspects of play of and now, and then, and can I, and then I do this, and whatnot, that is really at the heart of both Circle of Hands and this game, which are highly situational and yet very open to what you're going to do. In that they're precisely like Sorcerer, and indeed, well, kind of like a lot of my games with intense protagonist player characters. Okay, that's about it. I want to say thanks to the people involved, because it was really, really nice and fun to talk and think together. And it really also was exactly what you need. You hit sort of a creative uh, drain when you really write out a document sometimes. You're like, okay, that's all I got at the moment, and I know there's holes, and I know that it's not really a playable thing yet, but it's got to kind of encounter persons. It's got to encounter other people's minds and seeing their hands roll the dice and them think about how they want this to go, and what things that you hoped were intuitive end up being intuitive. So far so good. Seems like fun. Again, you can't really call this playtesting, but without it, no game.